I'll be in continuing on. Last time I was able to speak from Habakkuk chapter 1, so I'm going to do a short little review of the last part of the chapter and then start into chapter 2 this evening. And as I said last time, Habakkuk is and the minor prophets in general is not something that we hear from many times. So I'd give a brief overview of the book and what we'll be talking about. So Habakkuk was of the tribe of Levi, and his name means embracer. Habakkuk was a prophet that God used to write to Judah, which is the southern kingdom. And the theme of Habakkuk is to see Christ through living by faith. The three key verses in Habakkuk are Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 2 and 4, and Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 2. So I'm going to start off while everyone's still trying to find your place. I'm going to read the key verses to kind of just help set some of the context for the book. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. Now down in verse 4. Behold, his soul which lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. And then over in chapter 3, verse 2. O Lord, I have heard thy speech and was afraid. O Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years make known, in wrath remember mercy. And Habakkuk is quoted directly or indirectly in both the New Testament and the Old Testament. So it is referenced several times. I forget the exact number. I think it may be 36 times throughout the Old and New Testament. And in chapter 1, we see it introduces the book, and the author is Habakkuk. We see Habakkuk's prayer. We see the Lord's response, and then we see Habakkuk's testimony. So I want to start reading in chapter 1, verse 12, and then we'll read through chapter 2, verse 8 to kind of set some of the context here. Art thou not from everlasting, O Lord my God, mine Holy One? We should not die, O Lord. Thou hast ordained them for judgment, and Almighty God, thou hast established them for correction. Thou art of purer eyes than to behold evil, and canst not look on iniquity. Wherefore lookest thou upon them that deal treacherously, and holdest thy tongue when the wicked devoureth the man that is more righteous than he, and makest men as the fishes of the sea, as the creeping things that have no ruler over them. They take up all of them with the angle, they catch them in their net, and gather them in their drag. Therefore they rejoice and are glad. Therefore they sacrifice unto their net, and burn incense unto their drag, because by them their portion is fat, and their meat is plenteous. Shall they therefore empty their net, and not spare continually to slay the nations? I will stand upon my watch, and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision, and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yea, also, because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. Shall they not rise up suddenly, that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee? And thou shalt be for booties unto them. Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. So as we start looking at verse 1 here in chapter 2, it's the last of Habakkuk's testimony. He kind of wraps it up, and it says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. Habakkuk is standing here. He's watching, he's waiting for the Lord to speak to him. And it says, when I am reproved. So I was like, that's not a word we hear every day. So I was like, let's look this up. Let's see. And so the Greek word here is tokeha, which is rebuke, correction, reproof, punishment, chastisement, or argument. And it is translated 14 times as reproof, 7 times as rebuke, 2 times as reproved, 1 time it was translated arguments, and 4 times was miscellaneous. And so then I was like, okay, what is the the English translation today? What is it in today's context? And according to the American Heritage Dictionary, reprove means to express disapproval to someone or about something. It's to criticize. What I shall answer when the Lord criticizes and expresses disapproval of my comments is kind of what Habakkuk is thinking here, because he's gone through and he's laid out here kind of some of the problems with why God would use the Chaldean, the Babylonian people to judge Judah, the southern kingdom. He's kind of questioning, why would you do this? And so at the end here, he's like, I'm going to wait for your response, and you're going to criticize me because I know I'm wrong. But I'm going to wait and see what you have to say. And so in verse 2 through 20, we now are into the part where it's talking about the Lord's response to Habakkuk. And verses 2 and 3 specifically, we see the Lord's commandments. And in verse 2, it says, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables that he may run that readeth it. So Habakkuk was commanded to write the vision. God was going to reveal to him what he was going to write. But in the verse 3, he was commanded to wait for it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Even though it might be a delay in time, it will be fulfilled what I'm telling you in this vision, what I'm telling you to write. Write it down and it will come true. It may be time, but it will. And so as we go on into verse 4, we start seeing the Lord's grace. And verse 4 here is, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. And as I was looking, I was like, okay, what grace? What is the definition of grace? And grace means it's divine favor bestowed freely on people, as in granting redemption from sin. I was like, okay, so now I'm looking at the next word that I was looking was just, which is sadiq, is the Greek word here, which is translated 162 times as righteousness, or righteous, sorry. And 42 times it's translated just, and then righteous man 1 time, and lawful 1 time. So just is being lawful, righteous, right, being correct. And a cross-reference for the verse 4 here, I have 2 of them. The first one here looked at was Galatians chapter 3, verse 11. But that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God, it is evident, for the just shall live by faith. Here we see Paul is quoting from Habakkuk, they shall live by faith. And I was reading a note that Charles Ryrie made on this verse, and he said, Paul's use of the quotation, the just shall live by faith, is to stress that one can become justified in God's sight only by faith. He who is righteous by faith rather than works shall live. And then another cross-reference was Hebrews chapter 10, verse 38. Now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. We are not righteous, but through Christ we are justified by faith. And as we go on here in verses 5 through 8, we see the Lord's wrath. the beginning of the Lord's wrath. And in verse 5, yea, also, because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. So here we see that the Chaldeans is referring to here. They are proud that they're drunk, and they cannot be satisfied. They keep wanting more wine, and they're desiring that. And as we go on in verse 6, it says, shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. There is now a sentence being passed upon the Babylonians, upon the Chaldeans. And Matthew Henry said that since pride has been his sin, disgrace and dishonor shall be his punishment, and he shall be loaded with contempt, shall be laughed at and despised by all about him. At those that look big and aim high deserve to be, and commonly are, when they are brought down and baffled. And we also, for here, can look at Micah chapter 2, verse 4, and see that in that day shall one take up a parable against you, and lament with a doleful lamentation, and say, we be utterly spoiled. He hath changed the portion of my people. How hath he removed it from me? Turning away, he hath divided our fields. And so the people here are getting ready to be, the punishment is getting ready to come. The people that they have defeated are now going to be rising up against them and getting some of the revenge back. God is now getting ready to start judging the Babylonian people. And we see here in verse 7, shall they not rise up suddenly, that shall bite thee, and awake, that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them. So the others, the kingdoms that they have done this to are now, they're going to take advantage of the Chaldeans. They're now going to do the same thing to them. They're going to come and rise up against them. And in verse 8, because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. And we start to see now that the people are doing it. The Chaldeans are spoiled. They're going to be plundered. By who? By the remnants of the nations that they spoiled. Why? Because of the men that were killed, because of the abuse of the land, because of the abuse of the city, and because of the people that lived there. God is now bringing judgment upon the people that he once used to judge the Israelite people, the kingdom of Judah. He allowed them to be captured because they were not serving God. And yes, as back in chapter 1, Habakkuk was questioning God. God, why are you going to use a more unrighteous people to judge your people? Yes, we're doing wrong, but they're worse than us. Why are you going to use them to judge us? But God's now saying, Habakkuk, I know what I'm doing here, and I am going to eventually bring judgment upon them, and they are going to fall. And as we see here, that God used the Chaldeans to bring judgment upon the people of Judah, but God is now revealing to Habakkuk that the Chaldean people will be judged for what they have done. Just like God judged the people of Judah, God will bring judgment upon our country as we stray farther from the biblical foundations of our country that we were founded upon. God may not judge countries when we think that they should be judged. As we look across the world, across the globe, at the countries that are doing wrong and the things that are being done, we may not see immediate judgment by God. But God will judge in his perfect timing. He will bring judgment upon the nations that are not serving him. And the farther the countries stray from him, and the more harm they try to do to his people, he will bring judgment upon them. And in his time, will all be made perfect. And as we look forward to his future coming, we strive to grow closer to him each and every day, and to remember that there are times where we may not understand what is going on. We may be asking, why, God? But God has a purpose. He has a plan. And as we continue to strive closer to him and walk alongside him and serve him, he will comfort us. He will give us peace and help us to better follow him and serve him as we try to continue to grow his kingdom here on earth. And he's blessed us with that. He doesn't need our help per se. He could do it all himself, but he desires to use us to reach those that are lost. And so I desire, as I'm sure we all do, to see those reached in our spheres of influence, those that we come into contact with, maybe on a daily basis, weekly basis, whatever it may be, whether it be a neighbor, a coworker, a friend, family member, that we should be able to be emboldened to share our faith with them in the hope that we have in Christ, and ask that he would just help give us wisdom in each and every conversation that we have, and that we would give him the glory.